Hi guys, it's Holly here and welcome to the Strong Women podcast. The aim of this podcast is to interview strong women from all walks of life and take key learnings from their personal experiences. Now, by saying strong, I don't exclusively mean strong physically. I'll be talking to women who are strong mentally, emotionally, or simply women who have overcome odds throughout their lives. The key themes in each episode will be around fitness, mental health, and business. I truly hope their stories inspire you and encourage you, and equally I hope you can take away valuable pieces of advice to practice in your own lives. Today's guest is Pip Stewart, an adventurer, journalist and presenter. After studying history and politics at Oxford University, Pip subsequently worked in Asia for 5 years as an anchor and reporter in Hong Kong and Malaysia. She reported on the Malaysian election and produced political and travel multimedia stories for the Telegraph, BBC, CNN and South China Morning Post, amongst others. In 2013, Pip cycled home from Malaysia to London, as you do, covering 10,000 miles and 26 countries in a year on her bike. In 2016, Pip's adventures took her on a 3,000-mile cycle, boat and plane journey, exploring Brazil and Peru to raise awareness of the environmental issues in the region. In February this year, Pip took on a world first, paddling the entire length of the Essequibo, South America's third largest river from source to sea, alongside fellow Strong Women podcast guest Laura Bingham. There is absolutely no stopping Pip, and I love how passionate she is about sharing stories from people all over the globe. She's challenged herself time and time again, and that fascinates me. This podcast is for anyone who has an itch they want to scratch. She'll inspire you to just do it. If you enjoy the podcast, please do share it with others or leave us a review on iTunes or SoundCloud. Enjoy. Okay guys, so I'm at my studio right now with Pip. Hi Pip.
Hello Holly, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I've been better. I've got a flesh-eating parasite working its way through my neck at the moment.
Well, that is lovely.
Yeah.
As you do.
Yeah, I picked it up in Guyana and it seems to be slowly munching my neck, which is not ideal.
Oh my
but,
gosh.
Other than that, good spirits.
How did you know that it sounds like a really stupid question. How did you know that you had it? But how did it start?
So bizarrely, it started as this like tiny scab and I was just like, that's just weird. It looked like an infected bite or something. And then over the last few months, this tiny scab has become this hole in my neck, like a massive crater. It's disgusting. You know when you scare small children on the tube and they're just looking at you going like, what is going on with your neck? But hopefully the doctors can zap it and treat it and all will be well. So
they literally zap it, what, with like a laser or...
No, so I think I haven't got the actual diagnosis yet, but the idea is that you go into hospital, I think, for about 21 days and they put you on an IV and they pump you full of this toxin which will just kill the damn thing. So it's quite an invasive procedure, but it's quite a serious illness, I guess, called leishmaniasis, and left alone, it does nasty things to the body. So the treatment is better than the alternative.
Pip, that's insane.
Yeah.
And I guess when you mentioned it earlier on, it's so blasé, but actually it's serious, very serious.
Yeah, it's not an ideal diagnosis, but
that's a politician's answer. It's not great.
Could be better.
Okay, so as you know, we're going to start with a quick fire round. And hopefully you haven't done your homework. So, your favourite book?
Shantaram by Gregory Roberts. All about India and the slums and the underbelly of Mumbai. It's amazing.
So my husband was reading it when we were in Malaysia, which is like the perfect time. And then he came back to London and he was kind of like, that's not as exciting now. And it also melted on the beach. Oh. But it's it's a big, big book.
Yeah. But the descriptions of it are insane. And then I don't know if you've ever been to India, but I stepped off the plane having read Shantaram and the descriptions of the colours and the smells, I was like, he described it unbelievably well. It's gorgeous.
And also, there's things that happen to him, you're kind of like, surely that didn't happen.
Yeah.
It's mad.
Exactly. So definitely read that if you're after a bit of a thriller and, an entertaining travel read.
Lovely. The best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Everyone can teach you something. It's how I sort of approach the world, I think, because there's so much wisdom out there, and I think our culture focuses on celebrities and people in the public eye, but actually I found on all my journeys it's likely the guy sat next to you on the bus or the gal who has got the best wisdom.
That's so true, isn't it? That's so interesting. I've never thought about that. And it is sad, isn't it, that we look to these celebrities as being like the fountain of knowledge when actually, they've just been lucky, some of them. What is your morning routine?
We have a really long breakfast, my partner and I. It's like my favourite meal of the day. So we probably take about an hour over it. Even when I was getting up to go to work, I'd get up early so we could have like a proper breakfast.
Oh, nice.
And we do either like roasted tomatoes or avocado on toast, eggs, and just sort of it's a time to chat that's really quiet in the morning and something that I think we both really value.
That's really nice. Yeah, otherwise it is just a rush. Porridge on the tube, which is kind of what I'm doing. And the rest of the day just runs away with you, doesn't it? What does happiness look like to you?
Oh, it's a good question, Holly, because I talk about happiness a lot. I think it's contentment, and I think, ironically, it's not chasing happiness. For me, happiness is just one state like any other, and I think you need to accept every single state that you're in at any point in time. So, it's just a moment in time.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And what does strong look like to you?
Strong. It's people who are doing what they want to be doing, and you can see it in their eyes when someone's like following their path. They're lit inside. So I would say, people who are really following what they're born to do.
Perfect. So we're on that note. In your own words, Pip, tell us what you do, who you are, and why you're here.
Sweet. Well, I am traditionally a journalist. I now call myself an explorer, but maybe more an explorer of the human condition, I would say, maybe. I like to go to far-flung places and find out that knowledge and that wisdom that maybe we don't hear as much.
Okay, so how does that work? Talk us through, because where did you start? Let's go from leaving school. Yeah. What happened then for you?
Had a bit of a wrong turn. I went to uni and then graduated from uni, did history and politics at Oxford, and then went into Innocent Drinks, which was an amazing company. I met my current partner there, but I was terrible at selling stuff, Holly. I was rubbish. Like, people would be saying, "Oh, it's too expensive," and I'd say, "Yep, I know."
Don't worry about it.
I really didn't sell that much, so I sort of quit before I got the sack, essentially, and moved to Hong Kong to do a master's in journalism, which was way more kind of me in a sense. So I spent the next 3 to 4 years working and studying in Asia, first in Hong Kong as an anchor and a reporter, and then in Malaysia covering the election out there. But I found it, in a sense, I absolutely loved the reporting, but I was in hard news, and every day you're reporting on tragedy and things going wrong, and there's an adage in the media that if it bleeds, it leads.
Oh, God.
And I'm thinking, you know what, this isn't actually doing the world any good, I don't think, pushing all these messages out there, especially when on a daily basis I'm meeting incredible people with amazing stories, and I'm not being able to tell them. So when my partner Charlie and I decided to cycle home from Malaysia, I was like, this is an amazing opportunity to start telling some of these really positive stories and just getting parts of the world known that maybe aren't known. So we were in the Stans, for example, and everyone was saying, "Oh my gosh, you're going to Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan," and they were kind of equating it with danger and you shouldn't go there, you're probably going to be blown up, whereas actually the opposite was completely true. We found so much hospitality, so much love, and we were welcomed in a beautiful way. And I'm like, how can we tell more of those stories?
Because there's so much, we just don't know those areas, do we? So you lump them all together, which is terrible.
Yeah.
When actually they're all so individual.
Absolutely. And most people, I would say, through all my travels, 99% of the world is amazing, essentially. And it's just 1% that kind of cock things up a bit.
Yeah.
But that's what we're focusing on.
Yeah, that got the headlines. So how many miles was it then from Malaysia to London?
So it was 10,000 miles.
10,000 miles.
Yeah.
Okay, so how long did that take?
So it took 13 months. I'm very slow, Holly. I am a slow traveller. I go nowhere fast. And if Charlie was doing it on his own, it would probably have taken about 9 months. But I feel like I slowed him down in a good way. We stopped to chat. We had nice long lunches, afternoon naps, that sort of thing. So
were you in a rush? Like, did you have a set time, or did you just think, you know what would be epic? Let's just cycle home. Or could you not afford the plane fare? Like, where does that conversation come up? Let's cycle home.
Well, you know what, Charlie we were talking about going back overland for a long time, and then Charlie said, I've been doing some reading, and he said, a lot of people have cycled this route. I'm like, I'm not sure about that. The most cycling I'd ever done was around uni, and I'm not a cyclist, I'm not an athlete, nothing like that.
Okay.
And I thought, why not? I was kind of game for it. Which was a bad idea, Holly, because we didn't do any training. I literally sat on the bike the day before I set off, fully loaded the day we set off, and 3 weeks in, I had an absolute tantrum, like a complete meltdown.
Yeah.
Tried to break up with Charlie. I'm like, you picked the wrong girl. I can't do this. How did you think I can? But he said something to me in that moment that's always stuck with me, which is, these aren't physical journeys, they're mental ones. And I think that's a thread that's sort of run through my quote-unquote adventure career ever since, because I'm like, I might not be the fastest. I'm definitely not the strongest. But if I can keep it together in the head, then I know I'll get there.
It's so true. Even with much, much smaller journeys like marathons, we're not really designed to do them. And it is purely mental. Like, as long as you can put one foot in front of the other, you will finish it. You might not enjoy it. You might not do a very fast time, but you will finish. So 13 months, 26 countries, right?
Yeah.
So when you got home, then what did you do? Just have the longest bath ever?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Then I had a panic, because I'm like, okay, so it's all well and good doing these adventures, but now I need to get a friggin' job. Basically, came back, no plan, nowhere to live other than with mum and dad. So having spent 24/7 with Charlie, we sort of went off to our respective parents' houses and thinking, oh my gosh, now what? But thankfully, I sort of put out a few feelers, and I found a job at Red Bull as their adventure editor, which I worked there for about 3 years, which was amazing, and very much rooted in the stories that I wanted to tell, the more positive, uplifting kind of strength stories, I guess.
So I feel like we have brushed past that 10,000 mile one. I'll keep coming back to it. So you met amazing people. Where did you stay?
So we were doing everything from staying in hostels to wild camping. So much of Central Asia, we were just sleeping out in our tent under the stars, essentially. And for me, that is the most magical thing about adventure and exploration, because it gives you a chance to connect with yourself, other people, and the world around you, in a sense. And I came away from that whole experience of living off the land and sleeping in it, of just thinking, the world's a really good place. And more than that, we need to take care of it, because we are kind of ruining it slightly in some senses. So yeah, I just came away with a real passion to try and make my little corner of the world a little bit better in some way, shape or form.
What did you learn about yourself while you were doing it? Because 13 months of just doing that, I mean, you must have had so much time to think.
Comedy will get you through a lot, I think that was the big thing. And because I was so slow, we hit Europe in the winter. We'd originally planned to get back in autumn, and we were thinking, beautiful leaves, and it would be lovely, still kind of mild. But we hit France, and pretty much every day we'd wake up in the rain and cycle in the rain, and it was miserable.
Yeah.
And that was when I found that if I could sing at the top of my voice and just embrace the fact that I was wet from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, that really helped. So I think I developed a sense of humour, probably beyond what's already there, as a way of coping, and accepting that sometimes things aren't great. But you can't always change the problem, but you can change your response to the problem. 100%.
And the good thing about doing it with someone else is when you're having a shit day, they might be having a good day and vice versa. So
exactly.
You rub off on each other.
Yeah.
Okay. And so is it something you would recommend other people did?
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Oh,
if you're at a loose end, even if you're not a cyclist, because I definitely wasn't, I think if you want to travel in an interesting way, it's fantastic, because you will end up in places that you think, this is gritty, this is grim, why am I here? But they're the places that people will welcome you in with a cup of tea and be like, come and chat to us, come and stay, because they just don't get tourists. I mean, you are truly off the tourist trail in a sense, and that's when you get the real interaction in a country.
And you felt safe the majority of the time?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, with any sort of travelling, is listen to your gut instinct. And there were a few moments where I was like, not sure about this guy. And I think that's the time when, if your gut is saying something, move away. You don't have to be polite all the time. And I found actually being in a couple was quite good for that, because you could just remove yourself quite easily. But even when I travel on my own, if I get a dodgy feeling about someone, I'm usually just remove myself as quickly as possible.
Okay. So you're not overcautious, but you know when something doesn't feel right.
Yeah, but that probably happened 1 or 2 times on the trip, tops.
And isn't that amazing to think in 13 months?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, walking down central London, I get more like kind of freaked out than anything I've done travelling wise.
How lovely is that? So you got back, you worked with Red Bull, which sounds perfect for you.
Yeah.
So what were you doing with them then?
So I was their adventure editor, essentially commissioning and editing content, which was amazing. And the team there are fantastic. And they were very good at letting me say, hey, you know what? I just want to go off to the Amazon for 2 months to just cycle across the Amazon and report on deforestation. Can I come back to a job? So they were very good at things like that. When I had like personal projects that I wanted to work on, they were like fully embracing of the fact that this is a world that I love and thrive off. So can't ask for more than that out of an employer.
I guess that comes with the territory of hiring someone as like passionate and enthusiastic as you. So then some of these personal projects, talk us through those.
So in 2016, myself and my friend Reza Pakravan, we went to Brazil and Peru to look at how deforestation is impacting the indigenous communities that live there. And we sort of cycled for part of it along the Trans-Amazonian Highway, which is a road that was built at the end of the 1970s and 80s as a way of opening up the region. Unfortunately, it kind of led to a lot of deforestation. There's a lot of gold mining and soya plantation and cattle ranching. And honestly, Holly, it was one of those moments where I've read so much about deforestation, but when I was sort of cycling along and you're seeing burning forest, or you're on a river and you're seeing the gold mining, and we interviewed, it's possibly one of the most heartbreaking interviews I've ever done, a young guy who'd lost his wife, she was only 26, to mercury poisoning. And you just think, the gold industry is putting mercury in the water that the fish are kind of absorbing, and then people are eating the fish and bathing in the water. And it was just one of those moments where I'm like, whoa, I am so disconnected from what I'm consuming. And that was a real wake-up call. And I think what's great is we're seeing a real movement now, especially in the younger generation, of being super conscious of like what we're consuming and why. So that's really positive.
God, that's so hard. I guess it's good for you because you already had your experience as a journalist, that you're good at asking people the right questions. But how shocking is it that we are completely oblivious to what's going on?
Yeah, and even with that, I mean, we went for dinner with these guys, and I had no idea. I wasn't approaching this as a journalist. I was just having a little chat, and then it all came out that he'd only recently lost his wife, and he was our interviewee for ecotourism and how it can be really beneficial for the country and all of this. And then, you know, his whole backstory sort of unraveled, and you're like left just completely shell-shocked. So that was really hard to deal with. But the areas where the Amazon is intact, it is... Have you been?
No.
Oh my God, Holly, you'd love it. It's just possibly one of the most beautiful places. The sights and the sounds, and it's just a place full of both life and death in the most beautiful way I can imagine. So I'd highly recommend you go there. Wear long sleeves so you don't get bitten by a flesh-eating parasite.
Yeah, you've definitely taught me that. So you went there, and that was because that was just something that you felt you wanted to know more about, or?
Yeah, so Reza, my friend, he just approached me and said, look, I'm trying to do this documentary. I'm really keen to get it off the ground. My background as a TV reporter, I was just like, right, this is perfect. It's adventure travel meets an issue in a part of the world that I'm fascinated by. So it's like tick, tick, tick. And I was like, yes, please, Reza, sign me up.
Wow. And then, so that was filmed and...
Yeah, so that was filmed. It was a 6-part series for Al Jazeera.
So it's already been shown?
Yeah, it's been shown, and it's been in Canada and a few of the European territories as well.
That's amazing. So off the back of it, hopefully it will be making a change, or at least enlightening everyone.
Yeah, I mean, just getting the conversation started. And I think... this is something I really struggle with as a journalist. You go and do these things, and I'm like, the gold mining industry is a bad industry. And then what? Like, how do you actually affect real change? So that's something that I'm kind of struggling with at the moment, other than trying to talk to as many people as I can about it.
Yeah. You know what? I think you already know, we did a podcast with Laura Bingham, who you know very fondly. We'll touch on that in a moment. And she'd mentioned about how, you know, she's seen all these things, and she's come back and she doesn't know what to do about the things that she's seen, but she knows she needs to do something.
Yeah.
And it must be the same for you. Like, you know what the issue is, and but how do you fix that? What can you do about it?
Yeah. And I think that's what I really struggle with, because actually, as you mentioned, I've recently come back from the Amazon again, and often you come back with more questions than you do answers. And I think from my point of view, it's just like the more we can shine a spotlight on this, and the more we can raise awareness of the people who are doing amazing things out in the Amazon, the better. And so one of that is like making sure that Indigenous communities really do have land rights, because there's been studies that show that when Indigenous people are looking after the land, it's better protected and things like that. So there's a whole body of work going on in the Amazon, which is really positive.
Hi guys, sorry to interrupt this podcast. I wanted to mention that if you're enjoying this episode, I would really appreciate a review of it once you finish listening. You can do this on my website, on SoundCloud, or on iTunes. Furthermore, why not share it with all your friends and your family on social media, and let's spread the strong, not skinny ethos as far and wide as possible. Now back to the podcast. I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Yeah. So then you came back from that. That was 2016. And then what did you do? Did you sit still at all? Or?
No, so then I went back to Red Bull, did a bit of work. And then Laura, as you mentioned, sort of rang me up and said, Pip, I've got this harebrained idea. Holly, honestly, I think she sold it as I just want to float down a river in the Amazon. And I was like,
go on a jolly.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'll sign up for that. But no, essentially it was to paddle a river called the Essequibo, which is in Guyana. It was a river that's never been paddled from source to sea. So part of it was amazing that it was a world first, and I was definitely attracted by that. But more so than that, it was just a chance to go back to the Amazon and to see what was being done in terms of gold out there, and also to stay with the Indigenous community that led us and guided us on this trip, the YY, because, wow, those guys are like jungle survivalists. They know their shit. And it was just incredible to be living in dense jungle for about 2.5 months and learning how to not just live, but to thrive in that environment. And watching the YY at work was phenomenal.
Wow. So for anyone who hasn't listened to the podcast of Laura Bingham, just explain why you were actually doing it. It wasn't a jolly.
No, so
what was the purpose of this boat ride?
It was a world first expedition to paddle from source to sea of the Essequibo in Guyana. It had never been done before, neither by man or woman. And Laura, as you probably gathered from interviewing her, is massively pro women, and sort of showing that, we can do anything we like. So that was amazing. It was myself, Ness Knight, and Laura. The three of us, with the help of the YY, traversed this river, and it was just insane. It was possibly the most terrifying thing I've ever done, Holly. A lot of the journey for me was characterised by fear. Before we set off, I hadn't really done much kayaking at all, so we really trained hard in Wales for an expedition in the Amazon. Probably not the most sensible thing, but yeah. So we weren't pros, and I've sort of come back, and often, I don't know if you get this on journeys, that time afterwards to reflect is really quite useful. And I just think, so often I'd be lying awake at night in my hammock, listening to a caiman in the water behind me, like territorial growling from this caiman, and the purr of a jaguar behind me. And I know you're really into mental health, and so much of that was trying to calm my mind from going completely crazy, because in that situation, I just think, oh my God, I'm going to get eaten.
You could so easily think that way.
Yeah, and trying to get to sleep when you can hear caiman and jaguar, and there's lots of nasties in the water. And it did take me a good couple of weeks to kind of really ease into jungle life. But what I found really bizarre, and something I'm writing about at the moment in the book from the trip, is that the stress response I had when I heard a jaguar or a caiman was the same stress response that I get when my WhatsApp notifications go off or an email pings in.
Wow.
And okay, yes, it's massively enlarged, it's on a much greater scale, but I'm thinking, there's something really messed up in this. If I'm, at least when a jaguar goes away, you can relax.
Yeah.
In the modern world, in 21st century life, I couldn't. And that's what I found the most fascinating thing from that trip, was how, traditional and modern life kind of collided for me in a really interesting way. And I felt a lot calmer when I was away from my phone, when I was fully embraced in the moment.
Gosh, how worrying is that something that physically could eat you, or at least rip you to shreds, does have that same effect on you, on your stress levels of just feeling like you need to get back to your friends. You've got loads of WhatsApps coming through and you haven't responded to this email. That's actually really sad.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
And we're pushing that on ourselves. Like, we are almost causing this. Every time we download a new app that notifies us of someone's done this, someone swiped for you, we're adding it to ourselves. Like, it's our own fault, but we have no idea what we're doing.
And I don't know about you, but I would say I'm addicted to Instagram, and I will check it and check it and check it. I actually went to go and see them the other day because I was like, guys, if I'm a 33-year-old woman addicted to Instagram and I feel like I've lived, right?
Yeah.
What about young people who don't have that life experience yet and are addicted? Like, is it self-limiting them? What are we doing about this problem?
We actually, I think not last week's, but the weeks before podcast maybe, was with Bella Younger, who set up a parody Instagram account, and she's a comedian. She's hilarious, and she actually talked on that podcast about how she genuinely had addiction to social media, but her phone as well. And she checked herself in at the Priory because she realised that she was having like a real issue with it. She would get really stressed if she hadn't put a post up, and I think it's so easy to downplay it because you feel like everyone's the same as you. But, it is so, so damaging. And when me and Stuart were on honeymoon, I remember we were sat in absolute paradise. I'm sorry if everyone listening, if I mentioned this in Bella's one. So we were sat in absolute paradise. We were sat in a bar, having a beer and a shisha, overlooking the sunset, over just paradise. And 2 tables down from us, there were these young kids. They must have been, I say young, but they must have been like 21, a boyfriend and girlfriend. And he spent maybe 15 minutes taking pictures with his back to the sunset of her, posing. And she'd smile for the camera. And then as soon as he'd taken the photo, she would stop, look at the picture, and then tell him it wasn't good enough, take another one, change her position. All while me and Stuart are watching this beautiful sunset. This guy is happy to take pictures. And then when he's finally taken the picture, he sits next to her, and honestly, for the next 2 hours, they both sit there, and you can see them scrolling. You know when someone's on Instagram. Scrolling through their Instagram, looking at other people's pictures of other sunsets around the world, other people having fun. And this is a couple, a young couple. They should be snogging or whatever, if it's even called snogging anymore. But they're literally sat there admiring other people's lives while they're in paradise and they could be enjoying those same views. And it was so sad. Me and Stuart didn't have our phones on us the whole holiday. And I just felt mortified that these people were in heaven and they just had no idea that that's what they were doing. I just found it so sad.
Do you know what I found shocking about that story is you said you didn't have your phone for an entire week. And isn't that weird? Like, I get that the couples would do that, but I'm like, that is so rare in this day and age that you guys would just leave your phones, and like, hats off to you for that.
Well, before we went, because obviously, with the business, like, you just can't switch off, and with social media, it's a main source of our business, and so we ended up having to spend a lot of time beforehand, like, programming in and deciding, what are we going to put up while we're away so that I don't have to keep taking pictures. I don't have to feel every morning like, I need to put a post up today. And it was absolute heaven. 2 things I learned on honeymoon is it was lovely not having my phone, and I didn't wear any makeup for the whole 2 weeks, and I haven't worn any foundation since, except for a few weddings. But it was just weird realising that not having your phone on you was heaven. Like, it should just be the norm. But it was like taking a break from life.
Oh my God.
And obviously on your honeymoon it's lovely anyway, but it was not having my phone.
Well, I think the no makeup thing suits you because you're looking gorgeous.
Thank you. It's very kind of you. Anyway, enough about me. So social media, it has a hold on us. And it's interesting that it's of a similar level to the danger that the YY experienced, but from actual physical danger.
Yeah, it's mad. And bizarrely, I was just out in Norway a couple of weeks ago with the Marines. So they invited me along to do traverse some of Norway with them. They were essentially going by bike and by foot and by kayak across Norway to raise awareness of mental health. And what was fascinating was talking to those guys about how they deal with like the stresses of daily life. And wow, I mean, it kind of puts things into perspective. One guy said to me, I want to talk, but I don't know how. And he's like, I've seen my best friend being blown up in front of me. Another friend of his took his own life. And you just think, the more we can talk in society about struggles of any description, like I think for the better. And for me, the Marines, perhaps wrongly, sort of embodied this macho culture. And I actually spent time with them, and I found them just to be very resilient people who sort of need to talk as well. Like everyone needs to talk.
Yeah, me and Stuart talk about it quite often because my dad's in the parachute regiment, so they are frontline and jump out of planes and very extreme. And I know a lot of my dad's friends, and it's very similar. It's sort of drilled into them as soon as they join the army to almost not show emotion, because if you're having to fight against people, like you can't have emotion, you can't have empathy. So it's kind of drilled out of them from a really young age. Don't show emotion and do what you're told. And so then when awful stuff does happen to them, and you then expect them to show emotion because that's healthy, they just don't know where to begin. Yeah. They are it's so not normal to them. And so that's why a lot of them turn to drink and drugs, because it's the only way that they then start to communicate. And actually, if you see a lot of military people, when they have had a few drinks, like it goes the other way. Like that's when they do get emotional. Mm-hmm. And it's sad, isn't it? But it's great that we are starting to talk about it more. But me and Stuart always say, imagine what it was like for the guys that were in like World War I and II. They saw awful stuff, and they definitely wouldn't have talked about it. Oh my god, yeah, the stiff upper lip like image of a Brit is just like, wow, how you would have dealt with all of that, I don't know. Yeah, but you've seen stuff, like you've seen what the rest of the world is like, and that's why it's lovely that you want to talk about it as well. Yeah, because I just think that the world is full of amazing people, and actually so much of, I don't know, I think a real solution for society is to be a little bit more vulnerable, be a bit more honest. Everybody struggles. And I think mental fitness is like one of the biggest attributes that we can have. And what I found, even on this trip with the Marines, is that, Holly, it was my worst nightmare. I didn't really want to go because I'm just going to be so unfit. I'd just been recovering from glandular fever, and my worst nightmare came true. I was so frigging slow on the hill. They literally had to slingshot my ass up the hill. Like these Marines were doing like run-ups on the bike to like shunt me up. And I'm thinking, of all the things I was worrying about, this is actually worse than I'd even imagined. But it was amazing because as soon as they realised that I was physically struggling, they were there, and that support was there. And it actually became such a funny situation, and we made light of it. And I think anyone in the military is probably a master of morale in some shape or form. Yeah. But what I didn't really appreciate is that while I'm physically struggling, the people around me were sort of mentally struggling. And I think that's a lot harder to detect in society. So it's almost been like when I've been most mentally vulnerable as well, and I've got the right support, that's when I can do amazing things. Like when Charlie said to me, Pip, this journey isn't physical, it's mental. That enabled me to continue. It was just sharing that burden sometimes is enough to think, you know what, I've got that off my chest, I can move on a little bit. And there must have been a lot of that when you did the Essequibo with Laura, and it was Ness, wasn't it? Oh, the sisterhood, Holly. Yeah. And how nice, like women supporting other women. Yeah. Because do you all have different personalities? Very much so. Laura was massively the joker. Ness, for me, was like friggin' Lara Croft. She would be the first one in the water. I'm like, Ness! There were like friggin' things that can bite you in there. Just check first. And then I was probably, I don't know what I bring, Holly. I don't know. But yeah, we all very different. But it was really nice because I didn't know them that well before I set off. So I was like, I have nothing to lose here. And I have 2 potential friends to gain. And I sort of feel like I've come back, and yes, we had ups and downs because that's inevitable, but I do think of them both as sisters, and I'd absolutely have either of their backs if they ever needed it. That's lovely. And so how do you look after yourself then? Because like you said, you've seen things, and especially when you were being a reporter as well, like you've obviously seen awful things. How do you look after your mental health? Do you know what? I think probably best epitomised in a story from the jungle, because on the way to the source, bearing in mind we're in dense jungle and we knew that medical help was very far away if we got into trouble,
And I got my foot stuck between a log and a vine. And as I wiggled it to remove my foot, a snake sort of reared up under my bum. And Laura said from behind me, "Oh my God, there's a snake." Next thing I'd know, Jackson, one of our YY guides, had macheted it to death.
Wow.
And I looked at Jackson and I said, "Why did you kill the snake?" And he just eyeballed me and said, "If I didn't kill the snake, it would have killed you." And so I was having this absolute internal panic, Holly, because I'm miles away from anywhere, in dense jungle, having nearly sat on one of the most deadly snakes in the jungle. It's called a labaria snake, known for its swift and fast attacks. And probably for the next week or so, I was in a bit of a state of shock. I'd wake up in the nights with like night terrors. I've never woke up screaming before, but I was screaming at 2 a.m, just like waking up the entire camp. And it was little things like saying to the girls that I was scared. And that night I woke up screaming. They both came and gave me a big hug. And that was just enough to think, oh, okay, I'm not doing this on my own. I've got support. And I think when you say about mental health, it's like just connect with people. If the more you keep it into yourself, I think the worse it becomes, because I don't know about you, but we can be the most negative self-talkers, and you can think yourself, or at least I can, into like this massive funk of self-hatred and just loathing and all of that. And actually, sometimes having a mate saying, "I think you're freaking cool," is all that you need to kind of get out of that moment.
Yeah. So, talking and having that support network. I guess the sad thing is not everybody does. But, even if you haven't got that, there's phone numbers online and there's websites you can go on. There's always somebody to talk to.
Absolutely. And that's the brilliant thing about social media, I think. I know we've just bashed it, but there's also a huge amount of support. And, this week I put up a post about my leishmaniasis, this flesh-eating parasite going through my neck, and said, when have you guys had examples of bad news that you've managed to turn into positives? And I got so many replies of the most incredible stories of resilience and growth. And these are from people I've never met. And I just think, if we can utilize social media for good stuff like that, really positive. I felt so cared for in that moment from people I don't know. They're people who follow me on Instagram. But I think there is a lot of support out there if you're seeking it out.
We need to turn social media into something positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I asked Laura this question as well. So from a point of view of the fact that you are, you're an explorer and you're an adventurer and you're doing stuff that some of us would just think, I could never do that. Do you think that you were born that way, or it's slowly just a series of things that have happened to you that have made you that way?
I reckon anyone can do this. We are not special in any shape or form. I've always loved travel because, like you, my dad was in the forces, so I've been carted around a lot. So I think that's the desire to see things and meet people and talk to people has always been there. But it's funny, you do one thing, I was reading that you've done 8 marathons in 8 days. So once you've done that, you think, okay, well, what else can I do? And I think that's the thing with any of these adventures. If you'd have told me 10 years ago, I would have paddled down a river, doing white water and living in dense jungle, I would be like, no friggin' way, Holly, you've lost the plot. And I just think the more you do these things, the more your confidence grows and your belief in yourself. And so I sort of think, if you're listening to this thinking, oh, I want to try something, just try it. Because my biggest thing is don't be afraid to laugh at yourself. The number of times, I just make a prat out of myself when I'm trying something new. And that's like any skill, right? You have to start somewhere, and you probably are going to mess up, and that's okay.
That's so true. And so from a fitness point of view, what do you do? Because, you've turned your hand to cycling and kayaking, so you must have a general level of fitness already.
Yeah, I just love being active. And for me, it's being active outside. I think there's an incredible healing power in nature. And if I've had a bad day, I'll just go for a walk around here, down by the river, down by the Thames, and just potter around. And suddenly I think something just flips in me. So anything where I can get outside.
Especially in London, where you're indoors so often, either on the tube or the train. And then, so what's next for you? Have you already got itchy feet? Are you thinking about the next one, or are you happy to be home?
For now, I'm happy to be home. And I think having had all these health problems off the back of this trip, it's really made me sort of stop and think and go, whoa, how many risks am I taking here? And And much as I love physical journeys, I'm actually way more interested in the human stories. So I'm off to Japan in October to stay with some monks to look at an ancient healing practice, very much embedded in nature, which I can't wait to do, to be honest, Holly. Lots of like waterfall purifications. It sounds all very hippie, but walking through fire, and just it's a very ancient tradition that they've been doing. And then I'm writing a book about the experience in Guyana, just looking at how traditional and modern worlds have collided, and what we can take from that. So kind of self-help meets travel-esque.
So you have really got the bug, haven't you? Life will never be boring again.
Oh my God, no. I mean, I think when you're a traveller, it's like in you, isn't it?
Yeah,
for
gosh.
Sure.
Well, I know you don't think that you've done anything special, but what you have done has been incredible. So do you have, I know you touched on it a moment ago, but do you have any advice then if anyone's listening and they just think, God, that is such a cool life. My life is very boring. Where do they start?
Try something that you've always wanted to do. So recently I took up painting. I'm absolutely rubbish, but it's amazing to see the progression. So my first painting was a pile of pants, quite honestly. And now I'm like, okay, that's passable for about a 3-year-old. And so, there's progression. And I think it's just don't be afraid to do things. And so often it's that fear and that worrying that you're not going to get it right. And I think the more we can embrace the fact that you're not going to get it right and just laugh about that, the more you can achieve in life.
100%. Because that's the thing, we're also scared of not being good enough. And I read a quote somewhere a while ago, I think I've talked about it before, where it said, like, be okay with average.
Yeah.
And, you don't have to be perfect at everything. Like, you can be average at lots of stuff and really enjoy it. And often I'll see it in here when we get new clients, especially if they've got very high-flying careers, they get annoyed that they're not good at something straight away. So on the reformer, like, no one is good on that thing straight away. And I can see it in their face. And I have to say to them, like, you don't have to be perfect at this. You just have to show up. Like, you don't have to be perfect at everything. And I think that's really important. Otherwise, it just holds you back.
Oh my God. And one of my favourite things of this year has been, for years I've written poetry and I've been too scared to share it. Because I'm like, it's not very good. It's not Shakespeare. Whatever. And then this year I just decided, it doesn't matter, like, follow your own advice, because that's the other thing about advice, isn't it? It's really easy to like, yeah, this is how you do it, and then not do it yourself. And it's been one of my biggest sources of joy from this year, is just having people comment on my poems and sharing it with their mates. And I'm like, okay, so at least one person found something in it. So yeah, just, I don't know, self-limitation. Let's bosh through that.
Yeah, anything that you're thinking, oh, I'd love to do that, but I'm not going to be good enough, just go and do it. One thing.
Yeah.
And then there was a question I just wanted to ask you. I've completely forgot. So of all the places that you have visited then, what one place has been your favourite place?
Oh.
And why?
That's so hard.
I'm sorry. You can
say
say 2 if you need to. I'm such a pushover.
Oh, I really enjoyed Kazakhstan on our bike trip. That was we stayed in this amazing place called the Asi Plateau for a couple of days, and we didn't see a soul for about 3 or 4 days, and we were drinking from the streams and just being under the most beautiful starry nights I've ever seen. And that was a really sort of magical moment. I also love Nepal, actually. The people in Nepal were so friggin' friendly, and it's just a beautiful country as well. But yeah, I just think you can find beauty anywhere if you're looking for it.
That's it. And the same on the other side. Like, you can hate stuff. It's about your mindset, isn't it? Look for the beauty in everything.
Yeah, it's that quote, if you think you can and you think you can't, you're right.
Ah, that's another great quote. We should just do a book of quotes by you, basically. And then what has been the hardest thing for you when you've been exploring, or when you're on Essequibo, or...
Do you know what? I'd actually say it's right now. It's dealing with the fact that I might have this flesh-eating thing going through my neck. And it's not so much just for me, because how do I put this? It's really brought home the consequences of what can happen. And I think at least I've been so blasé about, this is stuff that happens to other people. And then suddenly it happens to you and you think, whoa, okay, hang on a minute, back it up, Stuart, And it's also made me realise just how friggin' lucky we are to be living in the UK, because if you get this and you're in Guyana, or if you're in much of the Amazon, the treatment is expensive and it's long, and you might not be able to afford it. You might not even be able to get to a health clinic in order to have it administered. So it's just really brought home to me a lot of the injustice in the world. And while I'm struggling with the fact that I might have to go to hospital for 21 days, I'm grateful for the fact that I can. So I think, often when I come back from these journeys, there's almost a period of like post-trip blues in a sense, because you're like, oh my gosh, my life, and I don't know how, I'm not explaining this very well, Holly, but it sort of shows into sharp relief just how lucky we are and how much change I think needs to happen in the world.
And you can almost feel a little bit guilty about that, when actually we're just very lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a friggin' pineapple in the supermarket when I was like, I saw one of those growing again. So it's weird things like that you often have off the back of a trip.
Okay. God, Pip, I could talk to you all day. You're so interesting. Guys, I really hope that you've been inspired by some of the things that Pip has done, and that it inspires you to follow your dreams. I know it sounds really cliche, but that, that you think of things you've always wanted to do and that you do them. If you can think of a friend that might need a bit of Pip's amazing advice, please do share this with your friends. If you have a review, or you want to let us know anything about the podcast, anything we could do better or that we're nailing, let us know. And Pip, how can people follow you on Instagram?
So I'm Pip Stewart on Instagram, Stewart.
Yeah, perfect. And we'll make sure that we have everything about you in the show notes as well. And thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Holly. It's been a pleasure.
And good luck with your neck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong Women podcast. If you have any feedback on today's topic or your own advice, please do let us know on social media or leave us a review on iTunes or SoundCloud. Did you know we also have an online plan that incorporates all the elements I believe create a strong, healthy, happy body? The Model Method Online is an 8-week holistic fitness plan incorporating mental health and nutrition support. Born from a frustration that all online plans are weight loss or aesthetic based, our online plan aims to improve the relationship that you have with your body. Go and try it for free now. The link is in the show notes, and stay strong.